All right, we are live, and welcome to the very first episode here at the Men Explained podcast. I'm Aaron Tharp.
I'm Josh Sims,
and we're coming together to make this really cool opportunity for men to join a community. As Josh and I kind of came together, and we'll get into how that happened. What we both have noticed is that there's not a lot of resources in a lot of places for guys to go to get good answers. I think we all have, a lot of questions, whether that be about our health, about our relationships, about different supplements. We're going to try and cover a lot of that here. But the whole idea is to build a community, build a tribe, a band of brothers, and do it in a way that's fun, engaging, and so that you get something out of it. But I kind of want to, know a little bit from you, Josh. Tell us a little bit about you and what brought you to the Men Explained.
Yeah. So again, my name is Josh Sims. I'm a physician assistant by trade, but I think you and I, we kind of sat down and had drinks one night and kind of talked about how you had your own podcast and you were doing things, for men stuff, lifestyle, fashion, dating, so on and so forth. And I think there was a desire to kind of branch that out and kind of to bring somebody into that fold and make something a little more universal for guys. And I'm a big believer in that same sentiment of community and a tribe. And I think that's how people are successful, right? There's a few people who can do stuff by themselves, but man, it's hard sometimes to just live life on your own as a guy. And there's a lot of expectations for men. It's always, there's always that myth of toxic masculinity, and men aren't toxic until you need them, Right. Otherwise, yeah. if you're doing your thing, if you go to the gym and you work out and you take care of yourself and you stand up for what you believe in, you're toxic. But until somebody needs you, right? So right. I think we're here kind of to dispel that myth of toxic masculinity, provide a platform to discuss a lot of things and bring some cool guests in to talk about that. We're not the experts on everything. That's not what we're here for.
Far from the experts.
Yeah.
Let's just make that clear. I'm speaking for myself, Josh. You know way more than I do.
Yeah, on a few things, and we'll get into that. So, but I think it provides a good place to bring people in to grow. Kind of by yourself on your own, and then kind of develop that and join in with other people who are part of that community. And I think that's a powerful thing. And I think, as society, the more good men we have in society, the better society is. People who are willing to kind of stand up, plant their flag, and move forward with what they believe in and be unwavering in that and refuse to be canceled by people for something that they did in the past, and admit your mistakes, but then also say, hey, I've grown, I've learned, I've changed, and this is what I'm doing with my life, instead of just kind of cowering in the darkness and going away, right? Yep. So I think that's kind of what we want to do. We want to change that stigma from a lot of different angles.
Yeah, we're expected to have answers, right? And it takes a little bit of vulnerability to ask, right? To kind of show up and not have the answers, right? Mm-hmm. So, as he mentioned, this is, a place for men to be able to do that, and to feel safe doing that there's nothing wrong with asking for help or just being curious about some different things. So what we thought we would do is start off from a health perspective.
Yeah.
So you're a physician's assistant. Yeah.
Physician assistant. People get very
how did I fuck that up?
Physician's assistant.
Okay, so
in the physician assistant community, there people get very upset if you refer to them as physician's assistant. Okay. We're not possessed by a physician.
Okay.
And I say, well, you get upset about that if you want to. I don't really care.
So I stand corrected. Physician,
because the assistant. 8 people who are going to listen to this are going to be 2 of them are going to be like PAs and get mad at you.
Okay, no, we want to start off on the right foot. No, that's good to know.
Oh man, I'm just giving you a hard time.
So. You see this on a daily basis. Mm-hmm. You work with men every day.
Yep.
And I obviously have a good bit of understanding and knowledge of my own and health. We have a number of different systems, like main systems, right? Your cardiovascular system, mm-hmm. your digestive system, and those things, as you age, they begin to decline. There's some things that you see as you age. When it comes to our hormones, the endocrine system is really where that's the motor, yep. Right?
Yes, it is.
So why, if I'm a man, why is that important? Why is that an important system for me to look after?
Because as we age, and this is all people, this isn't just men, this is women too. As we age, the endocrine system is kind of it's a giant feedback loop of mechanisms that control hormones and metabolic rates, and which then affects kind of how we look, how we feel, our mood, so on and so forth. And as we age, those things start to kind of wear out, right? It's like anything. I mean, we get old, we die eventually, but the systems start to slow down and break down as we age. And that causes lots of problems. Commonly hormones are mostly thought of in the arena of women because they have very sudden and severe changes in their hormones, and it causes lots of problems for them. So there's been a lot of research and money put into that, deservedly so, right? I mean, no one should have to go through what women go through when they go through menopause, and then after that, it's a bad deal for them. But for men, as we've progressed through that, everybody else, as guys get older, we kind of gain weight, we sit on the couch, get you a little more cranky, and we just kind of go to sleep at 9 o'clock and wake up at 4, take a nap at 2, and it's just guys getting older, right? And that was kind of the stigma behind that. But with what I do with men's health, I'm not a urologist. We don't work at a urology clinic. That's not what I do. I do more hormone replacement therapy, erectile dysfunction stuff. And when we started looking, we look more and more every single day at guys with their testosterone specifically. That's the hormone that makes men, right? And we're finding that it's widely low in a lot of men, and it's not just age. I mean, we'll see guys who are 30, 35 who their testosterone's low, and they've not been on testosterone in the past. It's just that's the way that their genetics function.
What are some factors? Because we live in a very different time now than thousands of years ago.
Yep.
When it was probably more normal because we were out as hunters and gatherers, right?
Yep.
It's feast or famine, live or die. So, are there some environmental factors, or like what can contribute to a lower or suboptimal levels of testosterone?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think the number one thing that you can always refer to back in anything when it comes to most of the problems is genetics, right? That's probably the number one thing, but there's several environmental factors. Stress is probably the number one environmental factor. We tend to live stressful lives, work hard jobs. Not getting enough sleep is a big one. Poor diet, lack of exercise. Those are probably the big ones. Substance abuse falls in there. Too much alcohol, smoking, drug use, right? That really affects our hormones too. But I would say high stress, lack of sleep, lack of exercise, and poor diet are kind of the main ones in a normal, healthy adult male. Right?
Yeah, we're also a lot more sedentary, I feel like, than
big time.
And that equates to being, active or not. But
yep,
we're more sedentary. It's more sitting in front of a desk or.
Yep, your body doesn't. You're not requiring your body to make as much testosterone.
Right.
Right. When you just kind of pound away at a keyboard and you don't really. Your body has no reason to, so it's not going to waste energy making something it does not need.
Right.
It's a very smart machine. Now we can improve that to a point, right? I mean, some guys can diet and exercise, and they can see their testosterone levels kind of come up a little bit, but at a certain point, you're going to run into a wall because your body just cannot make more than what you want it to.
It's exactly the case that it was for me.
Yeah.
Tried to sleep my way around it, eat my way around it, do sprints, deadlifts, the pills at GNC. Maybe I'm not supposed to say GNC, but well, I guess I blew the can on that. But yeah, have really done about everything I possibly could. And the reality is that it was just genetic predisposition, which is fine. It's like, that's the reality. So let's just deal with it. Right.
Yep.
So, I can speak from personal experience, but when guys come in, when they think that they may have subclinical levels, what are they experiencing? What are they feeling? What are they going through on a day-to-day basis that may trigger somebody that's listening to, okay, maybe I need to get my levels checked?
Yeah, I think the number one thing is just day in, day out fatigue, right? Just tired from the time they wake up, tired to the time they go to bed. Yeah. They nap during the day on the weekends, or they get 12 hours of sleep. They're still really tired. They might have a couple good hours here or there, but for the most part, they're just exhausted.
Yeah.
Less desire for sex, which is pretty abnormal for men. Usually, wives are saying, will you just get your hands off me? Like, enough's enough. But we get a lot of guys who come in and their wives are like, what's going on? Like, you're not approaching me like the way you used to. And so then that creates marriage problems because they think something else is going on, or they're not interested in them, and it's not the case. Weight gain, not sleeping very well, those are kind of big ones too. Mood change is a huge one, right? People don't think about it, but man, when you're tired, how do you feel? I mean, you want to get up and go out and hang out and do all this kind of fun stuff and be the guy and be chippy and have fun, and no, you're miserable. You don't want to do anything. So everybody thinks guys are cranky and they're mad and they have bad attitudes and stuff. And we'll start guys on therapy, and within the first couple of weeks, that's one of the first things they notice. Like, yeah, my wife tells me that I'm a lot nicer now. It's like, well, yeah, man, because you're not just wiped out and exhausted all the time. You got a little more in the tank, and everybody feels better when they're not exhausted and tired.
Yeah, I would say the two biggest ones for me were fatigue. Like, get up and go to the gym at 10:30. I'm like, how the fuck do I have brain fog?
Yeah.
10:30, 36 years old. How? Like, I'm eating right. Like, how's this happen?
Mm-hmm.
And it was really pretty irritable.
Yep.
Not short fuse where I'd get, I'd start hitting things and, like road rage, but just very irritable. Like,
yeah.
why is this such a big deal? Like,
just pissy about dumb stuff, right?
Yeah, real pissy.
Yeah.
But,
and that's the interesting thing, right? That's one of the stigmas of testosterone replacement therapy is the roid rage, and these guys are all blah, 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 right? It's the complete opposite, right? We start guys on treatment. Tell me your story about that. Like, how did that change for you when you started treatment? Give your personal testimony.
Yeah. So again, I'll be totally honest. I fought against it for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Probably my own pride got in the way.
Oh, yeah.
My ego, my pride was like, I got it. I don't need to do it.
We're really good at that.
Yes. Yes.
Really good at that.
Number one, I was just like, I'm not going to let the guard down.
Yeah.
And the reality is that I was in my own way. And when everything else didn't work, I thought, okay, what's the worst I could do? My brother, who's 4 years younger than me, actually went in, had his levels checked.
Oh, wow. Okay.
He was suboptimal.
Okay.
And so I'm like, okay, well, I went in a week later. I was too.
Mm.
Now, when I started, I could tell physically, my workouts were better. My reserves were better.
Mm-hmm.
My mood did improve, but the energy and the sustain, that kind of took a little bit longer. I've been on TRT now for, I think, almost a year, almost a full year.
Okay. Yeah.
And I would say that from 6 months on, the bigger benefits came from like the psychological side.
Okay. Yeah.
So like my mental state, like I wasn't having those like, ups and downs. It wasn't crabby, irritable. I mean, yeah, of course I am, but
sure.
Not to the extent. So much more calm, copacetic, and for longer periods of time.
Yeah.
I didn't have, that ups and downs. Outlook was a lot more positive. I was a lot calmer too. That's been my experience.
Yeah.
It's more the psychological side, which I think, if we can get a hold of our emotions as men, that's really everything.
Yeah. I think it's huge. I think it allows, your hormones, if they're not off, everything gets thrown out of whack. People have really weird symptoms. It doesn't, for guys, a lot of the time it manifests as this kind of fatigue and irritability and so on and so forth, right? But sometimes they're having like night sweats and they're gaining weight and losing weight at weird times, right? It's almost, it's like, it's a really awkward situation. When you kind of normalize things, it's amazing how your body responds to it. And then kind of the psychological aspects can follow.
Yeah.
Right. Because you were feeling right. Physically, you were feeling right. And then you're like, okay, I have more confidence in my ability to go exercise. I have more confidence in my day-to-day work because my brain is functioning, it's firing on all cylinders. My energy is really good. And it can take some time for that confidence to pick up, and then all that stuff kind of can clear up afterwards, right? It's not like a instant change.
Right.
Some guys expect that, and I'm like, well, you know what? That's not going to happen. So,
right.
Some guys will start on treatment, and they come back 2 weeks later, I'm a completely new man. And I'm always like, take it easy, right? But then a lot of them do sustain that. But that's not everybody. Again, it's just how your body processes the medications and how it takes time sometimes for the body to respond to that. But it's an interesting journey for everybody. Everybody's pretty unique when it comes to that, and it's good stuff though.
Yeah, they're kind of hard to track because they can fluctuate throughout the day even.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Yep. Like if you're on treatment and you get a bad night's sleep or you tie one on, it's not you're going to wake up and feel good, it's like you still got to take care of yourself. You still have to do your part. Yeah. It's not a magic pill. It's not a magic shot. That's not the way it works, right? You still got to get yourself right. You can't be sitting at your desk all day long eating Twinkies and Burger King and like, oh, I'm going to start testosterone. I'm going to be a new man in 2 weeks.
Oh, come on, man.
Yeah.
Look, some Twinkies? Come on.
I'm not saying you can't have them.
Right.
I'm just saying don't come to me and tell me nothing's changed.
Yeah. No, that's
because I'll give it to you straight.
That's
tell
absolutely
you
fair.
Up, right?
Yeah, no, that's fair. And it's not what we want to hear, but it's the reality.
Yeah.
Right. It's not a quick fix.
Yep.
It's not just a pump and dump. It's really not.
Nope.
There are other factors that go into it that are contributing factors, and that are a direct result of diet and exercise and lifestyle. And
yeah.
So I mean, if I went out and I asked 10 people about getting testosterone, what are the myths, stigmas? What's out there?
You know, it's a good question. I think if you ask people in like a younger generation, like, you know, we're both 37, right? So we're still relatively young guys, but the age that we grew up in and the guys older than us, I mean, it was only related to kind of a few things, right? Bodybuilders and athletes, like baseball players like Barry Bonds and stuff, and all those guys. And so there's this cheating mentality behind it. There's this meathead mentality behind it that that's only for certain people, like guys who want to get ripped and big, or guys who are athletes, or guys who are cheaters or scumbags, and you're going to get all these other things, like it's an illicit drug, right? Like it's taken like meth or something like that. I think there's stigma in that. Now, younger people, they're far more open to all that stuff just because they're younger and they're a little. That wasn't part of their life when they were growing up, right? So I think, you know, the big stigma is obviously that I get asked when I start guys on it. They're like, well, you know, obviously it's the roid rage thing. And I'm like, nah, you're going to have the exact opposite, right? Like, and you know, the thing that I always circle back to guys on is like, we couldn't do this on the scale we do it if it caused all these problems.
Right.
You know, and so that's one of the things. There's questions about heart health and those types of deals. And I'm like, if I gave you something that was going to give you a heart attack, you think the government would let me do that? You think I'd still have a job? Right? No, and actually we see the opposite in guys with low testosterone. We see an increased risk of diabetes, increased risk of heart disease, because your body doesn't have the metabolic support from the testosterone to kind of burn off the sugars, to support your muscles, to use those things as fuels. They kind of just get stored. Yeah. And then things go sideways when that happens.
Your heart's a muscle.
100%. Yeah.
So if it does well, if there's information to support the fact that it is good for muscles, because even in the myths it says that that's the case. Yep. Your heart's a muscle.
Yep, and it's not skeletal muscle like it is like your biceps or your quads, right? So it's not gonna, and that's a good thing that you bring up, right? Because then people think like, well, it's gonna enlarge your heart. It doesn't. You know, growth hormone, like human growth hormone, can, but testosterone doesn't affect the heart muscle that way. Now it can make your heart, if you're exercising, you're dieting, take care of yourself, it'll make your heart a more efficient pump for sure, and that's what you want, right? Yeah. You don't need a bigger pump. You just need a more efficient pump that works better, right? And that's what it's good for. And so another thing is, you know, all these myths that people see, it's like, well, there's a bunch of 19-year-old kids running around, like they're not running around with prostate cancer, they're not keeling over heart attacks, and their testosterone's probably like 1100, right? So I just tell people that, I'm like, you were that way once at one point too, and look at you now, right? Are you better off then, or are you better off now? And most of the time it's, well, better off then when I was younger. Well, I was younger. So, you know, there's all these different kind of things, and you know, the acne is one of them, and that's common. You know, that happens. It does. That's what testosterone does. It can cause some acne, but it's not like the guys that start, they maybe get one or two zits here and there. It's not like when they were 17 and they're breaking out, or none of that stuff. You know, there's some of the things about the ball shrinkage stuff, the testicular atrophy is the fancy word. And
so I want to stop. Go ahead. I want to stop you there. So, because that shrinking balls that's a problem for every guy.
That's a red flag, yeah.
That's a huge. That's we're not looking for.
Yeah.
Little trinkets, little raisinets.
No.
So, how do you guys resist against that? How do you make sure? Because if I'm 37 and I still want to have kids, that's important to me. Or if maybe I'm 25, and I still want to have kids. Yep. Or even if I don't. But let's focus on if I still want to have kids. Yeah. How are you protecting to make sure that I don't end up with raisinets. Yeah. And I can still have kids.
Sure. So let's talk about kind of how that happens, right?
Cool.
So there is testicular shrinkage associated with testosterone use. And the reason why that happens is because our brain, specifically the pituitary gland, produces two hormones that are kind of signaling hormones. And this is the way the whole endocrine system works. It works in a feedback loop. It sends out a signaling hormone to a target organ. That target organ creates the hormone it wants it to make. And then that hormone accumulates in the blood, and then that signaling organ senses it and then kind of says, okay, we either need to send out more of the signaling hormone or less, or just keep it normal, right? I know it's a little complicated, but it'll kind of come together. So when we start guys on testosterone replacement therapy, the testicles are no longer making testosterone for them, right? Because the reason why that is we're giving it from an outside source.
Yeah, it's an exogenous form.
Yep, the levels go up, and then that sensing organ that sends out the signaling hormones is like, hey, I got a lot here, bro. Like, we don't need to make any, boys, so it starts to slow down. It kind of shuts those signaling hormones down because it's like, okay, I got these turned off, and I'm still seeing all this testosterone. Now, those are also stimulating the testicles, right? So that's where it's like, it's basically kind of like exercise. They're not being stimulated, so they kind of shrink and kind of just relax, right? Now it happens to some guys, doesn't happen to some guys. It just kind of depends. It happens more often than not. So now the way that we work around that is we use HCG. And that mimics those signaling hormones. So once a week medication, some guys use it twice, depending on if they need it or not. Now, a lot of people, that's a red flag to some people, especially guys who use testosterone illicitly because they use that on their off cycle.
HCG is a red flag, you said?
Yeah, because a lot of guys who cycle steroids,
yes,
they'll use the HCG when they come off of it because they're trying to kickstart their body to make more.
Okay.
Right. And that helps everything kind of go back to its baseline.
Okay.
Now, we're not doing that. We're doing medical therapy, right? That's the difference. People are like, well, I heard about ABC and D. I'm like, I don't care what you read on some internet forum at some place. Like, that's not what we're doing, right? We're doing medical therapy. We are actively treating testosterone, right? So we're giving testosterone replacement therapy, and we're being proactive about preventing potential side effects. So that's why we give the HCG. And we give another medication. Everybody's heard about the bitch tits, right? By guys who start this and they don't control their estrogen levels. That's what causes that breast tissue growth. We give an estrogen blocking medication called anastrozole. Prevents the testosterone from converting from testosterone into estrogen. So again, that's what I enjoy about what I do every day, is because I don't work in a reactive environment. I hate reacting because you're just waiting for bad things to happen, right? So we approach it from a proactive standpoint, treating the testosterone, preventing the side effects from even cropping up.
Yeah. So in your opinion, what's required? Like when you say you monitor it,
yeah,
dive into that a little bit more. So if I'm thinking about going in, I've been sluggish, I've been tired, I'm doing all the right things, I'm eating, but my testosterone levels might be lower. Mm-hmm. If I'm going to start working with somebody about my levels, what does that look like in a given week, in a given month?
Yeah. So there's a few ways that we approach it. Is we like to draw blood every single month and look at your levels. We don't just look at testosterone. We look at your estrogen levels. We also look at your PSA, which looks at prostate function. And we look at like your CBC, or complete blood count, looks at red blood cell count, your white blood cell count, hemoglobin, hematocrit. Hemoglobin is kind of the oxygenated portion of our blood cells. The hematocrit is the percent of your whole blood that is red blood cells. That's kind of the thickness marker that you sometimes hear us talk about, like how thick is someone's blood. Yep. The testosterone causes our body to make more red blood cells, so it can thicken the blood. So we watch that every single month too. But the goal is to make sure that your levels are where they need to be. And we're not just treating that number though. So like if a guy feels really good and his testosterone's like 700, it's like, man, I feel great. I feel 100 times better. I want more. And I'm like, why? I'm a drug dealer. That's not what I'm doing here, right? Yeah. I'm here to make you get medical therapy. Right. Some guys require a little more, 900, 1,000, just depends. Right?
So can you widen a little bit the discussion on the numbers?
Yeah.
Because I think that you can probably focus too much on a number, or maybe we're both on it, and I know that Josh feels great at 1,200, and I might feel great at 900, and knowing that you're 300 more. Should I ask for 300 more?
Sure, yeah.
Right. So can you kind of
small inside, doesn't it? A lot of guys do that. Look, my buddy said he was 1,100. I'm like, I don't care.
Yes.
Like for me, it's a case by case basis, right?
Right. We're very competitive, so sure. The numbers are important. Yeah, so can you flush that out?
Yeah. So I think just as humans, we generally invest a lot in data and values and numbers, and more is always better, and that's not the case. Specifically in medicine, it's not the case. Like I'm not going to give you more of a drug. Like if you're on a blood pressure medication, the blood pressure is perfect, 120/80. Take 20 milligrams of this drug. Like I want 40 milligrams. More is better. It's like, yeah, next thing you know, you're going to be face down and you're on passed out because your blood pressure is bottomed out, right? Yeah. So people don't see it that way when it comes to the testosterone, because it kind of, and that's where we have to do really good education on our part as medical providers, is that we're not chasing a high, because they get this bump and they feel better. So they're like, yeah, give me some more, man. Give me some more. And I'm like, no, that's not the way it works, right? You're going to fall into a new normal. You're going to kind of lose that honeymoon phase when you start the treatment. But the numbers are there just as a marker to kind of track our progress and how we've done, right? Now, we don't want you too low, but we definitely don't want you too high. And I always tell guys, if you're at a certain point and you're feeling good, well, if we're going to increase your dose, you're going to kind of run into what I refer to as the law of diminishing returns, right? Your number might go up on this piece of paper, but you're probably not going to subjectively feel better. You're probably actually going to have some bad symptoms, right? You're probably going to start getting more acne. You're probably going to start sweating at night. You're probably going to start getting hot flashes during the day because, again, you came in because your hormones are imbalanced. Now we've overcorrected and your imbalance is in another direction, and now you're starting to have problems because you have too much testosterone. And you guys are like, oh, I don't know if that's right. And they don't believe me. But I'm like, well, first of all, I'm not going to show you that. That's not what I'm going to do. But I just kind of, again, put my flag in the ground and say, this is not, we're doing medical therapy, or we're not here to chase a high or do A, B, C, or D because you, Dr. Google, think that's what we should do. Right.
Yeah.
Those are my favorite though. Right.
I have to say, when I first started, you come in once a week and I get the week's worth on a Thursday is when I came in, and Friday I was a beast.
Yeah.
In the gym, I would run for miles. I was like untouchable.
Yeah.
In a good way. I mean, I wasn't like, barreling over people just because I could, but yeah, you could really tell. And then, it would fade off and I could tell, oh yeah, it's Tuesday.
Yeah.
I need to get back in there again because I now understand that to be a very, not severe, but a pretty low. I was up high and then I was real low. Now, I split it up.
Yep.
And even if I don't, when I come in for my drop shipping to get my to do my blood draws,
which means that you do your treatments at home on your own.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So no, I just want to make that clear that we do in clinic treatments once a week, or patients do their treatments at home and come in once a month. So so that's not a nebulous.
No, that's a good distinction. I chose to have them, have it shipped to me so that I could administer it myself.
Yeah,
right?
easy. It's easier for a lot of guys.
Yeah. Not that I don't love coming in and seeing, your beautiful smile, but it's just easier on my day. But even when I do that now, so when I come in and get a full week while I'm waiting for my drop shipping stuff to come, it's not even really that at all.
Yeah.
So over time, I've noticed that when the ultimate goal was to be in balance so that you feel better most of the time, or to feel better more of the time. That's much more the case than it was in the beginning.
Yep. Yeah.
So it's it's stabilized, right?
Yep.
Which is that's the goal. I mean, that's what you're after anyway, rather than the peaks and valleys.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the split dosing is kind of a nice little kind of offshoot to talk about. The reason why we do that sometimes is everybody's different, right? Let's talk about that. Genetically, there's a lot of cool research in genetics and pharmacology on how our body metabolizes drugs. Some people are really quick metabolizers. Some people are slow metabolizers. You're probably a quick metabolizer. So that's when we split it up. So guys will be like, well, I come in and get my shot on Friday, and then by like Wednesday, I feel like it's worn off, right? And it's because their body just metabolizes the drug faster than guy B, who's like, no, I don't notice a difference at all week to week. Everything's good with just one treatment.
Yeah.
And so that's when we do like what normally let's say you for argument's sake do 200 milligrams of testosterone a week. That's when we split it into 100 on a Monday, 100 on a Thursday. And it smooths that out like instantly. Guys don't notice that anymore. It's an inconvenience to get more injections, but sometimes we have to trade that for optimizing therapy. It's
in my opinion, and I don't want to project here, but in my opinion, it's a small price to pay when the alternative is to feel as shitty as I was before coming in.
For sure. Yeah,
and again, that was more just me being in my own way, just pride. Okay, great. So
sorry, little side note there. Why we do that and how it can, because so some guys, if they're guys like, well, I do testosterone, but I feel good for 4 days.
Yeah.
Well, that's something that we can change, right? So there's lots of tinkering, and that's the cool thing about this is it's not uncharted territory what we do, but it's relatively new as a medical therapy. Guys have probably been treating patients with it for a while, but the more that we kind of dig into this, we realize how much we can really do and move around and change things to individualize it for patients, right? It's not like, hey, Joe, I just put Bob, Rick, and Gary on this one. A doctor wouldn't say that, but I'm saying in their head they're thinking that, and they're like, well, it's a one-size-fits-all program. I mean, that it's not, right? I know that it's not, and that's why I love being able to. I'm the guy that I don't like a mile wide and inch deep. I'm more of the inch wide and mile deep, and I get to do that with this, and it's awesome. It's fun. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, you get to see you just probably lives change. I mean, honestly, relationships change, improve.
Yep. And that's the hard thing. So in medicine and in this the world, the information age we live in, we are so focused on data, right? Show me the data that it works. Well, it's like, it's a subjective change for guys, right? So I can't provide you, I can give everybody numbers that people's testosterone came up, right? But I can't give you a subjective study that's not helpful.
Right.
No one will believe that. They're like, well, did you incentivize them to tell them that their energy went from a 4 to a 10? Like, well, no. I mean,
Right.
but and that's where, as a medical practitioner, I do like seeing people so frequently, because then I know, and I can see when they kind of have like an off week, or they're like, man, I'm just not feeling very good this week. And then that's where we can have the lab give us the data to show that, oh yeah, your testosterone numbers, they're like 300-400 points lower than they were last month. Like, what's going on? Did you miss a week or something like that? And we adjust their dose, and then they feel better. Right. So there's a lot more subjective and a little bit of objective data that we get. But I mean, I see, I work at many clinics that probably house over 3,000 patients, and it's kind of hard to make that up. Right. There's just too many people to be able to be like, it doesn't really work.
Right. You see patterns.
They just like to come in and, pay their insurance premium just for nothing.
Right.
It's fun and games. So that's kind of the stigma that a lot of primary care docs will throw out. Like, well, it doesn't really work. And this, what we refer to as senescence, or the body kind of slowing down, as a natural process. And we should just let that run. And I say, yeah, you have fun with that. Mm-hmm. You go ahead and be that guy who's tired by 4:30 and wants to be in bed by 9, whose wife's sitting there on the couch.
To hell with 4:30.
Wine and dinner.
To hell with 4:30. It was 10:30.
Yeah, I mean, it's quick. I mean, some guys can run through that tank real fast, man. So
yeah, it's brain fog and fatigue at 10:30 in the morning. I'm like, I'm just done with coffee. How am I tired already?
Yeah, that's enough. Yeah.
You mentioned something about the primary care physician.
Yeah.
And about how he's kind of talk you off the ledge a little bit.
Yeah.
It wasn't terribly long ago, and correct me if I'm wrong, that it was kind of black market for them to even not really talk about it, but administer it. Help me out here.
Yeah, I think one of the things is we don't get our education on the male hormone system is not very, I don't want to say it's bad. It's just not very helpful, right? Because you don't really, they say, yeah, a guy comes in, you test his levels, and then you just give him testosterone. And that's it, right? Now we go into a women's health section, and man, I remember just like studying for hours and hours and hours and hours, like trying to figure that out, and birth control and how that affects hormones and hormone replacement therapy in women, and all this, that, and the other thing. And it was a library to an article in a magazine for men. Yeah.
It's that cumbersome.
Yeah. Women are, they have a much more complicated, as guys, we're simple to the core, right?
Yeah.
And I'm talking from just a mental to a complete anatomical standpoint. Like, we're in physiological, we're pretty simple, right?
Yeah.
Give me meat, give me a couple of beers, give me a gym, and I'll be pretty happy, right?
Yeah, that's fair. That's
we're not delicate flowers, and thank God for that. So,
it speaks to the larger discussion about why they're more on the emotional side.
Yeah.
If you're driven by a lot more hormonal changes, then yeah, that would make sense.
Yeah.
Because even I, as simple as we're built, when I didn't have the right levels, I was a crabby little bitch.
Yeah.
So
because your hormones are out of balance, and that's the thing that people understand when women go through their monthly cycle. Their hormones they change drastically, right? And so one of the things I always tell guys, and I love it when like a guy comes in with his wife and we're talking about like treatment and stuff, and if they're like get like a night sweat, or like, oh yeah, I get a little bit more emotional. I'm like, well, your estrogen level is too high for what your body is normal. And I'm just like, if we let your estrogen just run out of control, you're gonna start, you're gonna get really emotional. You might get some nipple sensitivity. You might put on some water weight, and they're like, oh yeah. And I'm like, yeah, now you know what your wife goes through for 3 days every month. Now you give them a little bit of a break, and the wife laughs, and they're just like, oh. So they go through those changes so frequently.
Yeah.
But guys were again, like I mentioned before, it's a slow, steady decline into that. So we kind of got off track. So we'll circle back to the primary care stuff. So we don't learn a lot about treating low testosterone. There's not a lot of research on it. There's not a lot of data on it. There's more of like people trying to say that it's not helpful than it actually how it can help people. So a lot of primary care docs who do venture into it, they're very conservative when they do treat it, if they do it. And I don't want to poo-poo primary care docs. They're great. They have one of the most important roles in medicine, right? And I think the more ground that we gain as providers in what I do, we're starting to find that a lot of primary care docs say, I'm glad that you go there, because you're like one of 4 patients that I have, and I kind of feel like I'm a little bit in the wilderness with this, because I just don't do it.
They don't, and I've never been through med school. You're a lot closer. I don't think that they don't go deep with it.
Yeah, because I got to worry about the guy who's got diabetes, and the dude who's got heart failure, and then the next guy who needs a biopsy of this and that, not the guy who's just like, oh, fix my testosterone. I don't want to minimize that portion of it, but it's like it's such a rare portion of what they look at, and what they treat, and they've got this whole thing where they got to take care of everybody from. I mean, some docs you go into small towns. I mean, they're seeing kids, they're seeing old people, they're doing pediatrics to geriatrics and everything in between, and doing call on Saturday night in the ER, right? Like it's one of those things where they're like, okay, I don't have a lot of time to sit down and look at this, and then if I have to see you every week, do you realize? Do you see my waiting room, right? Like you're going to come in here, you're going to wait for an hour and a half to get a shot before you're going to get out of here. Like, do you want to do that? Or it's a very complicated thing for them just to throw into their practices. They got to learn a whole new process all the while treating all these other patients.
Right.
So I don't think it's I mean, they're more than capable and smart enough to do it, right? That's not the question. It's just, can they fit
it's a bandwidth thing.
Yeah. Can they fit it within their schedule, right? And do they have the time to sit down and learn about it? Now, at some point, do I think that we're going to have dedicated people doing this in big primary care clinics? Yeah, I think so, because I think we're going to see how pervasive this low testosterone issue is. And I think it's going to be much more widespread. But I mean, for me, we have to look at the medications that we're using, how they work, and why we're using them, and making sure that, as primary care, sometimes we'll give a shot once a month, once every 2 weeks, and that's not the way the drug works. It lasts for 7 days, the testosterone cypionate that we use. So you're kind of doing your patients a little bit of a disservice, right? Again, feel good for 4 days, and then they're not going to get a shot for another 10 days, right? So you're kind of giving them a little taste of it, and then you're effectively suppressing their system, because they're usually not getting the anastrozole, which is the estrogen blocker. They're usually not getting the HCG, right? Because we use those off-label of what they're originally intended for, but they give us results in the preventative treatments that we're trying to achieve.
Yeah.
So it's understandable why primary care docs aren't in it, but it allows us to do what we do. And then if we run into issues, because there's plenty of patients who don't have primary care docs, and we find stuff and we're like, hey man, you need to go to A, B, C, or D, right? My goal is to bridge that gap between us and build a relationship with these people that are primary care doctors to allow us to work together. I have plenty of guys who are like, hey, my doc wants to see my labs. Yeah, sure, man. Just tell me what to do. And then if they have a question, just tell them to call me. I'm more than willing to talk to them, right? We don't sit over here in our ivory tower where they're in their ivory tower and fire salvos at each other. That's not what we want, right? We want to work together. We want to work together, because if we sit there and pissy pants with each other about this stuff, who loses?
The patients.
100%. Because it's not about me.
Yeah, man. Well said. I like that your approach is to take the the opportunity side of it to bridge the gap, because guys are going in that they have, hey, I'm tired, I'm moody, the symptoms that we've gone through, and the first line of defense at primary care is probably not going to be hormonal.
No, they usually don't look at it, right? You come in for a physical, we look at almost everything but testosterone. And in a defense of a primary care doc, like the majority of low testosterone symptoms are aligned exactly with what depression is. Right. And so it's like, guys who have little interest in doing what they enjoyed before. They don't sleep very well, or they sleep too much, or they don't eat enough, or they eat too much, or they don't have a lot of energy. They're moody. They feel bad. They feel sad, and so on and so forth. All those things check those boxes. Right. Now, there are guys that will come in like that. We'll start them on testosterone replacement therapy, and they'll see some gains, right? They'll feel better, but they're still having these issues. And I'll kind of talk to them like, what's going on? What's going on, man? Like, what's going on in your life every day? Like, what do you like to do? Are you doing what you like to do? Is that enjoyable for you? Right. Kind of have that conversation like, no. And I'm like, well, you know what, man, there's a lot of guys that will start on treatment, and then we'll piggyback that with an antidepressant, and you'll be surprised how much better you feel. I mean, I know not everybody wants to take that, because that's this whole, like, the mental illness thing is still, for some reason, I can't figure out why it's such a stigma for people. But there's still a component, right? I don't ignore that. I don't think testosterone is going to save the world. It's going to fix every problem that we have, right? That's not the way we don't, that would be foolish, right? But the good thing about seeing guys week to week is we can have those conversations, right? It's good to frequently see those guys, every week or once a month. So again, it kind of helps us find, I don't want to say an alternative treatment, but maybe there's something else wrong, right? Yeah. What if you start this guy on an antidepressant, he doesn't feel better? Do we look at the testosterone then, or do we do it? I mean, I think we do it before. It's a better screening tool to look at it before. So that way you can say, okay, let's try testosterone. If that doesn't work, then we try a medication that we add on.
And you're seeing them on a frequent enough basis where you're going to be able to troubleshoot that pretty good. Whereas if I'm just going to the one primary care physician, I'm probably not going on a weekly basis, maybe not even a monthly basis. I'm going.
How often do you see your primary care doc?
I mean, usually for if I need a physical,
yeah,
or if shit's running downhill,
yeah,
like if I got a problem.
Yep. Yeah, and it's I mean, it's like it's so funny as a medical provider to tell guys like, oh, do you see a primary care doc? You go get your annual physical. Man, the reason why I get an annual physical, and this is so terrible, is because my wife's insurance requires it.
Hey, at least you're honest.
I know, but I mean, it's like
thanks, Aetna.
As I get older, right, and that's exactly what we have. We have Cigna, but as I get older, I do realize like, oh, maybe I should go see like my doc and just communicate with her a little more and let her know like, hey, like. I need to see about A, B, C, or D or whatever, and just go in and like, oh, so she's not like, so it's January 2021. I haven't seen you since August of 19. What's going on? I'm like, oh, well, the insurance company on this. So it's, you know, you don't want that. You don't want that disconnect with your primary care, right?
Yep.
So, I just, I try not to be a hypocrite. So
no, I think you got a fair outlook on it. So, I mean, we've covered a lot. What I think I want to do is to kind of close out with a call to action about, you know, what we're trying to communicate, what we want guys to be aware of. Yeah. You know, if they're feeling fatigued, lethargic, kind of having a little bit more of their emotional ups and downs, packing on a little bit of weight, maybe not seeing the gains in the gym, anything along those lines, what do you recommend for them to do?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's and this is not like a thing for guys over 40, right? I know you said you're 37, right? Yep. I'm 37. We're both on testosterone replacement therapy. It's a good tool to at least investigate, right? I think it's important as not just a human, but as a man, not to just ignore when things are going a little sideways. I think standing up and saying, okay, like, there's something going on here that's not right. I don't feel the way I felt a year or two ago. Like, what can I do about that? Instead of just going, like you said, you had a lot of pride about it. And that's good for a little bit, right? We can all feel on pride for a little bit until you run to the wall. Mm-hmm. And I think I think one of those, the thing about that is kind of setting that aside. I mean, there's a lot of times that when we do kind of put the ego and pride aside that we win. And it's not, I probably shouldn't say it sometimes, I say it's pretty much all the time, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, there's very few people who just succeed based off of ego and pride, right? You usually probably look like an asshole when you do that. Mm-hmm. You may not think you do, but trust me, when you walk out there and like, I'm just like, you know? Yep. So it's, I think kind of dropping that and going in and talking to somebody. And I would recommend going and seeing somebody who specializes in it, right? It's not, and again, what I do is not like this urological specialty, or I'm not a cardiologist. I'm not even an endocrinologist. I specialize in a very, again, 1 inch wide, 1 mile deep area of men's health, which is testosterone replacement therapy, erectile dysfunction, peptide therapy. Those are the big 3 things that I do. Yeah. And I like doing that because I can sit around all day and read about that stuff and not get in the weeds on crazy stuff. And then I can come and talk to a guy who comes in with those specific problems and feel like, hey, I am the expert on this, right? And then build that relationship, right? So they will know that, hey, I'm coming to see Josh today. This is what he does, right? And but he's got the education that if he sees anything wrong, he'll refer me to the right people, and it just creates a good network for patients, right? And you can feel, and I think doing that, going to the right place, you can feel confident in that it's like, okay, I'm not going to get recommended something I don't need. I'm not going to get thrown something that I don't want, right? I came here for this specific reason to find out if there's a problem here, and if that's it, they're going to treat me, and if it's not there, then we'll move on to the next thing, right? So
no, well said, man. So. Yeah, that's the call to action, man. Just pay attention to how your body's feeling. How do you feel on a day-to-day basis? Is it declining? And maybe it's time to just admit that, like, hey, I've done what I can do, and this is maybe outside of my control. Yeah. So let's do what we can within our control to feel better. So let's go get our levels checked. Mm-hmm. So that way you can also establish a baseline, right? And you get it from the people who study it, who know it, who work on a regular, ongoing basis, day-to-day basis with men. Yep. Every day. Yeah.
And I think the other big thing is that the value of doing it, right? Then provide, you're a resource for other people that you know, right? And as guys, like some guys are like, well, I'm a Ford guy, or I'm a Beretta guy for my guns, or I only drink Jack Daniels. All that other stuff is garbage, right? We're very brand loyal as men to a fault of stupidity, right?
That's pride again.
But this can be like, you know, hey, you can go to where I go, but just go see somebody, man. Like, I'm telling you, I started this treatment 3 months. I mean, you can see it in me, right, Brian? Like, you know,
Yep.
I was doing the same thing you were doing 3 months ago. Now look at me. I grind through the day and I get done and I go home and I hang out with my kids and my wife and then I'm good.
Yeah.
And you're over there taking a break every 15 minutes. Like, most guys will say like, hey, I know what you're going through, bro. Like, I can relate to you. I've got a resource for you. That's, huge. Right?
Yep.
We can market all we want, but nobody's going to believe it until they know somebody who does it. Some people will just go on their own accord, but I'll tell you what, man, if somebody comes up to me and says, hey, man, like, I know we talked about this, I'm doing this, you should go get checked out.
Yeah.
I'll probably rely on my friend more than I will the radio ad, right? So I think that's huge.
Yeah. Yeah, because you're hearing it from somebody who's experienced it.
Yep. Yeah, I'm done, Black. I'm done.
You're good, man. No, that's awesome. So, that's the moral of the story. Go get your levels checked.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with it. It's totally normal. You're going to feel a lot better. Yep. So,
yeah, it's
awesome.
a natural process, right? Again, it's natural. It's not you. It's just the way that your body is designed.
That's right.
So,
awesome.
Cool.
Well, that wraps up episode 1 at Men Explain. Thank you so much for joining us. We will be back with another episode, and we hope that you'll join us. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks, guys. All right, thanks for tuning into the episode, guys. We appreciate you listening. Do us a favor, if you would hit the like button below and subscribe. You can also hit the little bell. That'll send you a notification when we post a new episode. In addition, if you have any questions, concerns, or comments, shoot us an email at hosts, that's plural, HOSTS, at menexplainpodcast.com, or go check out menexplainpodcast.com. Do us a favor, just share this with anybody you think that they would like it. We appreciate you tuning in. We'll catch you next time.